The following program is sponsored by Community Psychiatric Centers and is produced for educational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical or psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content should not be used for self-diagnosis or treatment of any health-related condition. As always, seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions regarding a medical or mental health condition.
Welcome to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. Tonight, military deployment and its effect on children. Right now, U.S. troops are doing 15-month combat tours, along with short rest periods between deployment. And the stress on families continues to grow. What can we do to help children cope? For answers, let's meet our experts. Dr. John Carasso is Clinical Director of Community Psychiatric Centers. He's a clinical licensed child psychologist and a certified school psychologist. And Dr. Robert Lowenstein is Medical Director of Community Psychiatric Centers. He's a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist and a fellow of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Dr. Carasso, what's the actual scope of deployment right now, and what are some of the challenges that these children are facing?
Sure. The scope is remarkable. There's estimated upwards of 500,000 children right now under the age of 5 who are waiting for their deployed parent to return home. That's actually the most since World War II. Incredible sacrifice. You have to express our gratitude to these families of what they tolerate and what they have to deal with. If anybody has any doubts, they should talk to a family member about what they're experiencing. Also, Sesame Street put on a wonderful production called Talk, Listen, and Connect. Heart-wrenching, really. It's almost hard to watch at times in terms of it's sad watching the children and how they experience this. It's stressful for children. How they experience that stress is very individualized. We may see any number of things. Preschool children will have a tendency to see more regressive behaviors, bedwetting, clinginess, wanting to sleep in bed with their parents, and that can also translate into some behavior problems that can begin to surface. So it's important for parents to be especially accommodating during those difficult times.
Especially because these parents are really away for a long time. We were talking about 15 months, maybe
Exactly.
a couple months off, and then they're back. Dr. Lowenstein, what about school-age children? How does it affect them?
Oh, it sure does. Most families respond fairly well to the stress of the deployment, and some of the reactions of the children in the families depend in part upon whether or not they have their own problems and whether the deployment and clearly in those cases the deployment affects them more severely. Children in general, though, school-age children who are faced with deployment can get whiny, they can get aggressive, they can get anxious. The family themselves can feel unsupported and anxious and isolated during the time of deployment. They may have fears about what's going to happen financially. The media coverage on a day-to-day basis can cause greater anxiety and fearfulness for the well-being of the deployed person overseas.
Let's go to the older children, Dr. Carasso. What about teenagers?
Sure, there may be a tendency to think that older children, teenagers, may be able to tolerate this better, but they too are susceptible to episodes of depression, heightened anxiety from this, worry, because they are even better able to grasp the nature of the conflict. There may also be some behavior problems that surface in the sense that if I get in trouble, if I misbehave, then you can't leave type of thing. And so that's on a subconscious level usually, but again, it's something that can be a challenge for parents.
Also, children can be unsupervised if the parent themselves are having trouble in dealing with the loss or the separation and are not able to give the children as much attention as they might like. The children can get into more trouble with the law, can get involved in drugs and alcohol, or act out in other ways in the community.
Are you seeing in your practice more cases because of the stress that's being placed on families now?
We do. We see, in particular, we see stress with the family family members who return to the family after a deployment and what they have to go through in terms of trying to reintegrate into the community and into their families. It's a real challenge for everybody involved.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about the ways that you can prepare children for the deployment and also when the parent's coming back home. Stay with us. You're watching Community Psychiatric Centers on PCNC.
Have you noticed something different about your child lately? Does your child seem withdrawn, unhappy, depressed, or prone to sudden outbursts? Your child may be suffering from a mood disorder, and it may be time to get help. At Community Psychiatric Centers, Dr. Robert Lowenstein and Dr. John Carasso lead a highly trained professional staff that offers mental health diagnosis, treatment, and therapy to children and adolescents. Call 1-877-899-6500 today for a free phone consultation.
The internet offers wonderful connections, but who's connecting to you? Your personal information could be an easy target for hackers and thieves, but you can protect yourself. Stop and think before you click. And visit StaySafeOnline.org for ways to keep your information in your hands.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. We're talking with Dr. Robert Lowenstein and Dr. John Carasso of Community Psychiatric Centers about the effect of military deployment on children tonight. And Dr. Lowenstein, what are some of the things that parents can do to help prepare their child for deployment?
Okay. Prior to the deployment, you can do certain things that will help. First and foremost, it's important for the family to get together and communicate openly about what to expect during the deployment. It's important that the parents tell the children that the deployed parent is doing an important job and that is necessary and that will help the community at large, and also discuss their fears and anxieties about what might happen to that person while they're overseas. The other things that can help are to make sure that the deployed person is able to communicate on a regular basis, either through email or letters or telephone calls, to continue to have communication with the child or children in the family. It's also important for the family to continue to move forward, to pull together and go ahead and keep the same routines and schedules and expectations of the children. That's very important to give the child a sense of security and consistency. Child's exposure to TV also probably should be monitored to some degree so that every day they don't hear about deaths or dying or whatever else terrible thing is shown on TV, which helps to increase their anxiety. Don't make promises you can't keep. And also, the extended family can be used as a support for the family. So this is where grandparents or community and friends come in to help the family through hard times.
Dr. Carasso, what about after deployment has taken place? We see these videos where there's a little boy I remember this one distinctly, in a classroom, and all of a sudden, the parent comes in who's just returning from deployment, and it's just so emotional. I think those are the ones that really hit home. How do you prepare a child for that, especially when the parent might be going back in a couple of months?
Sure. And we'll talk a bit more about preparing for the actual parent's return home and how to manage that. One of the things, though, during the actual time when the parent's away that we want to focus on is as Dr. Lowenstein mentioned, maintaining that sense of normalcy, that routine, that consistency within the family environment. Again, normalcy is very important. Dr. Lowenstein mentioned the idea of any number of creative things that a parent can do, because that sense of connectedness that occurs during the deployment will help with that return, because they are connected that way, in the sense that if the parent is creating videotapes, audio tapes, messages for the child, so that almost on a daily basis, the child, especially toddlers, are having visual reminders of the parent. The parent's on video reading stories to the child, reading bedtime stories, reading storybooks. They're pulling out notes on a daily basis from that deployed parent. Those are the things that help to maintain that connectedness, so that when the parent returns home, the parent's not a stranger. There's that sense of, well, let's stay. That's that type of thing. As well as scrapbooks and photo albums and whatnot. All those things help to maintain that connectedness. As Dr. Lowenstein mentioned, listen to the child, be aware of signs of anxiety and problems. If it seems as though things aren't going well, it seems as though the adjustment process is prolonging and the child is presenting with anxiety issues and having difficulties in school and getting in trouble, then of course it's time to seek professional assistance. Limiting television, limiting viewing episodes of the war and whatnot. And again, spending extra time with the child so that those things can be monitored closely.
Also, a single parent has to learn to take care of themselves.
Exactly.
And has to be able to make sure that they're in good shape, that they have enough energy and can give good attention to their children. Once they do that, then the children feel a lot better. And sometimes these parents also need extra professional support and guidance in order to get through these bad times.
It's a great point. You know, how the parent responds to all this is a direct reflection of how the children respond as well.
What about risks, and what should a parent say about those risks, Dr. Lowenstein, when they know they're going off to war, they know what can happen?
Mm-hmm.
How should they communicate that to their children? How candid should they be?
Well, it's an ongoing discussion. You can't just sit down and have this discussion once. This is really something that should be done openly and maybe over a period of weeks, if not months, if possible. They need to talk openly and honestly about the fact that there are risks involved, but that the parent will take as much care as they can to protect themselves, that the cause they're going for is noble, and that they're involved in a job which is extremely important.
On top of that, though, in addition, the idea of focusing on the fact that they are extraordinarily well trained, they're in the best army that's ever existed, and that they have the best equipment that's known to man, and that, and then again, focusing on the causes is that these people are heroes, and with that focus on the noble cause helps children to accept the fact that this is something bigger than the family, and it's really important.
Dr. Cresser, what about school problems? If a child begins to have some type of problem, how should a parent handle that?
Well, the key is even before the deployment, for the parent, before deployment, and it's really thereafter, in the time period thereafter, for the parent to maintain close communication with the school staffs, letting them know about the deployment, possible reactions, maintaining communication so that if there are problems, grades start to slip, if teachers start to notice that the student is off task more or struggling with peers, that they can take steps to be more accommodating. They may adjust schoolwork, they may adjust any number of things within the school environment, but the key is to maintain that communication so that when there is a problem, it can be focused on.
Parents can also meet with their children on a weekly basis as a family, sit around a table, sit around dinner, and talk about what's happened over the last week, and have the children have the ability to express their anxiety, their anger, their sense of frustration, their loss. All of that can come out.
Are schools doing enough? You know, we're talking about what the parent can do, but are schools doing enough to help?
As much as they can.
I think they do as much as they can. I think this is a problem which needs to be addressed by the entire community, the extended family as well.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about what we were talking about just a little bit, which was when a parent is coming home, how do you prepare the child for this homecoming? Stay with us. You're watching Community Psychiatric Centers on PCNC.
Do you have a child, adolescent, or teenager who is having trouble at home, in the community, or at school? Call Community Psychiatric Centers for help.
I work as a licensed psychologist and certified school psychologist. My partner, Dr. Lowenstein, he's a board-certified child psychiatrist. Together, along with our professional staff at CPC, we're prepared to meet any family mental health need when they need it most.
When a child is in crisis, when a child is suffering, when a child is in pain, a family is in pain and a family suffers. And our goal is to relieve that pain and find the child where they are and help the family to heal. And that's the basis of our program, is to help families to heal.
For a free phone consultation, call Community Psychiatric Centers today at 1-877-899-6500 and watch Community Psychiatric Centers Presents Wednesdays at 7:30 on PCNC. Community Psychiatric Centers, connecting you, your community, your world, one family at a time.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. We're talking about the effects of military deployment on children tonight. And Dr. Crosso, do children understand time the way we do? And how do you prepare them for mom and dad finally coming back home after being gone for so long?
It's a great question. And we think of this reunion as a joyous, wonderful time. And clearly it is. But it also has its own inherent stressors and difficulties. One of the things that helps is what was mentioned before in the idea of maintaining the child's familiarity with the parent that's been deployed for up to 15 months. The idea of, as I mentioned before, the audio tapes, the videotapes, the pictures, the scrapbooks, the emails, the letters, all of these things are helpful so that when the parent returns home, it's a parent that the child's familiar with. This is especially true when we're getting into toddlers and early elementary school children who clearly their sense of time and it was just different from older kids. And that also is a struggle too, in terms of parents have a struggle with when the parents deployed, and it's sort of, well, how do I explain to them when they're coming home? With elementary, with preschool children, you can't say, well, they'll be home October 15th, 2008. I mean, what does that mean to a child of that age? So we may use significant time markers, such as after your next birthday, after Christmas, that sort of thing. Daddy will be returning home. That still is somewhat vague for them, but it helps. When the children start getting into elementary school, then a use of the calendar and specific dates becomes more practical, and they can even X off the dates in preparation, which is the key, in preparation for the parents' return, which helps to prepare them emotionally for when they actually see dad, or mom for that matter.
Dr. Lowenstein, what about the feelings that these children might experience? I mean, we talk about obviously, elation and everything, but are other feelings, can they surface at this time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the parent that's been away has been away in a lot of ways. They haven't been part of the child's life on a daily basis. The parent that's been left behind, so to speak, has taken all the responsibility for the care, well-being, and discipline of that child. So the child may, upon the return of that parent, may fear and have anxiety over, well, what's he or she going to be like? How are they going to treat me? Are they still going to love me? Some of the fears could have been also that they left me because I wasn't good enough for them, or they wanted to get away. These kinds of feelings can surface depending upon the child's age. In general, some of the deployed parents that return need some time to get used to getting back into the family structure, and it does require some patience. Sometimes children want attention of that parent and don't have patience to be able to wait for that parent to respond to them more appropriately. Also, there's some children that may experience some behavioral problems after that child returns in reaction to feelings that they've repressed about the parent being gone. They may suddenly get angry, they may have acting out, they may seem depressed, may have sleep problems, may begin to wet the bed or suck the thumb if they're very young children, displaying a behavioral response to the return of the parent.
And do those behaviors and those responses and feelings, do they show up right away, or can it be kind of delayed?
No, it can be delayed. It can be both immediate and delayed. Sometimes can go on for a good deal of time. Also, if children have other comorbid conditions, if they already are depressed or have ADHD or have had oppositional disorder or bipolar disorder, and the parent returns, that of course puts the whole family at risk for increasing stress and problems.
Dr. Crosso, what about some tips to help parents for dealing with this post-deployment period?
Sure, when they return return home. Well, as Dr. Lowenstein mentioned, go slowly, recognizing that the parents have been gone for a long time, so they have to readapt to the family environment. It's important for the parent returning home to take the lead, to allow the spouse to take the lead and sort of follow the lead of the spouse that's been there, in terms of discipline, in terms of the family routine, in terms of just the things that go on throughout the day, recognizing that, again, they need to readjust to this whole process. Obviously, taking individual time with each child, but by the same token, allowing the child to take the lead in terms of how that relationship rebuilds and how they reconnect. The children may be ready for that, children may not.
Also the deployed parent, when they return sometimes with their own emotional problems. They've seen death, they've seen lots of injury, trauma of unbelievable proportions sometimes. They've had a lot of responsibility, which they've assumed, and a hard job. So when they return, it takes time for them sometimes to sort of unwind and get back to, quote, normal life. So they may need time to kind of ease into it and be alone for a period of time, and also get counseling if it's necessary before they can be fully integrated back into their family.
Sounds like a real juggling act, especially if you have, more than one child. Say you have 3 children and they all react differently. Yes. And now you have a parent who's just coming back and they're trying to decompress from what they've been through.
Exactly.
Is this really, I'm trying to just determine the stress level that these families are coming into.
They're incredible people, and they do a wonderful job of managing all this. As Dr. Lowenstein mentioned at the outset, most of the families respond very, very favorably, and they manage this, they get through it, and they come out even stronger in the end. But it's a challenge in the process, no question.
All right. When we come back, we'll be taking some final questions for our doctors right after this. You're watching Community Psychiatric Centers Presents on PCNC.
As a parent, you want your child to reach his or her full potential. For children with autism, early detection and treatment can make a world of difference in your child's life. At Community Psychiatric Centers, our autism unit is led by 2 highly trained and experienced mental health professionals, Dr. Robert Lowenstein and Dr. John Carasso. Their expertise in the field of autism spectrum disorders means you and your child will get individualized help you need every step of the way. Community Psychiatric Centers, connecting you, your community, your world, one family at a time.
I don't usually go for stuff I don't know about, but I was told this hot stock was a sure thing. The folks who sold me the stock said I would double my money. And I'm not getting any younger, so I went for it. Turns out the whole thing was a scam. The company didn't exist, and I lost thousands.
For information on avoiding investment scams, call the Pennsylvania Securities Commission.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. A few final questions now for our doctors. Dr. Lowenstein, we were talking during the break about just the marital stress. Now here you have 2 parents who are just coming together and they have all the children to interact with. What kind of stress is there on them as a parental unit?
Well, there's enormous stress. Oftentimes these couples have been separated for long periods of time, a year and a half sometimes, after only having been married a short period of time. They also may have had problems before the separation. Maybe the relationship wasn't perfect. Being separated and returning after that period of time puts enormous stress on the relationship. They have to get to know each other again. They have to be able to set guidelines about how they're going to treat each other, what the nature of the relationship is between each other, what the nature of the relationship is between the deployed parent and extended family members who may have stepped in and helped out grandparents, uncles, aunts, etc. So it's a period of time in which the couple needs to get to know each other again and get to find out who they are as people.
Sometimes even going through the courting process again, and that can be an extended process before they feel back to normal.
So kind of like a dating period almost. To get to know each other and then try to work the kids in at the same time.
Exactly.
Full plate.
Indeed.
Let's take a few email questions from our viewers. Here is one. My 11-year-old seems to be having a really hard time with my husband's deployment. He's crying a lot and does not want to play like he used to. Should I be worried, or is this a normal reaction?
Well, it's not a normal reaction. It's obviously a reaction that does raise some level of concern. It's important for the parent to ask questions of this child about what their fears and anxieties are in terms of the parent being away, or afraid they won't come back, they're afraid they'll be injured, or they have all kinds of other fears. They may be depressed. And so this needs to be explored more fully.
Does this ever trigger abandonment issues later in life?
Well, not so much later in life, necessarily right then and there, at the time. Sure.
Right. The abandonment issues tend to be decreased when the child has a sense that their parent is really doing something important, that what they're doing is heroic. It's helping society in general, and their parents are doing a wonderful job in protecting our country. When they feel that strongly about their parent doing a good thing, they don't feel abandoned.
And for this child, if the parent were to provide that reassurance and get them involved in various activities to help get their mind off of it and whatnot, if it didn't help and this continued, then seeking professional assistance would be very important to give this child coping strategies to help them be able to work through this without all the heightened emotionality, helping them to have a more reasoned approach to the whole thing.
Also, the parent's approach to the separation is important.
Exactly.
Does this mother feed into this anxiety? Does she unconsciously say things or do things or act in a way that heightens this child's fearfulness?
And so usually family sessions are necessary to help with that.
All right, let's take another email. My 8-year-old son asked me about the war in Iraq. I was not sure what to say. His father is over there. Any suggestions?
I'm not sure what we would say about the war in Iraq ourselves. It's hard to know how to answer that question. I think the important thing is to be open and honest with the child and first ask them what they think they know about Iraq. Get as much information from them about what their understanding is, and then maybe give them some information about what's going on there in a way that's age appropriate for the child to understand.
Yeah, try to get a sense of how they're getting their information, who's telling them things, what are they being told, and offering the reassurance that that their father is part of a very strong unit, and the fact that they're very well trained, and that type of reassurance about the noble cause and whatnot, limiting their time watching television, things of that nature to help them work them through this.
Let me ask you this. Do children, especially at the younger ages, do they really even understand the concept of war? How do you explain what war is to them?
Well, a child under the age of 9 or 10 probably doesn't fully understand what the concept of war is. All they understand is that there's a change in their life and their parent is not there. Maybe as they get older, they begin to understand that. Certainly as teenagers, they do.
And with that, the explanation may be something as simple as there are bad people and there are good people fighting against them to make sure that we stay safe. I mean, something as simple as that can be very reassuring, and that Daddy's a good person, he's a hero, and he's going to keep us safe.
And if they have problems, you have services that will help them.
Oh, yes, we do, and it's very important that they seek these services if they begin to see their children showing any signs of emotionality, behavioral problems, sleep problems, etc.
So keep a really close eye on them before, during, and after for the best results. Thank you both for being with us, and thank you for watching. We will see you next week on Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. Good night.